What happens when a billionaire calls his own black wife stupid in front of everyone, not knowing she secretly earns 3 times more than him? The question that froze the entire finance party was simple yet sharp like a knife. What happens when a billionaire insults the wrong woman in a room full of power? The gala hall glowed with golden lights, and pride as investors walked with wine glasses acting like kings, while Naomi Carter stood quietly near the marble staircase wearing a sleek black dress, holding a gentle smile and hiding the storm in her eyes, because she knew people in this room never looked at her with respect until they needed her brilliance. She had built her career with sleepless nights, solving financial disasters, earning 3 times more than her husband Richard Vaughn. Yet she let him shine, because she believed marriage was a team. But tonight she would learn that Richard did not see her as equal, but as someone he could belittle whenever he wanted in front of the elite crowd. Richard walked in loud, confident, arrogant laughing as he slapped backs of rich men while ignoring Naomi like she was invisible, and whenever she spoke, he cut her off, as if her voice was an interruption, not a contribution. The crowd clapped for him because he was a billionaire, and they worshipped numbers, not humanity. Grace Howell, the event host, came to greet them and complimented Richard for his business empire, then turned to Naomi with a dry smile asking if she worked in support staff, because she assumed a black woman at a finance party could only be an assistant. Naomi felt the familiar sting, but she stayed calm, answering politely that she worked in the financial sector, yet Richard laughed loudly, twisting her words, calling her cute, but not smart enough to understand real finance anyway. The room echoed with uncomfortable smiles, and Naomi felt something in her chest break quietly, because the insult was not only public, but racist and meant to humiliate her. Daniel Parker, who knew Naomi's real status, clenched his jaw, watching her take the disrespect with silent dignity. Naomi looked at Richard's proud face, realizing he did not know her latest contract, her biggest deal, her highest salary, because she had kept it private, waiting for the right moment. But now the right moment was slowly building like a silent storm. Richard continued mocking her intelligence, calling her a pretty decoration, not a thinker, while investors nodded, thinking it was harmless banter, because they too believed racism wrapped in jokes was acceptable in wealthy rooms. Naomi simply breathed in steady and deep, because she knew something no one here knew: the world was about to learn exactly who she was and exactly how powerful she had become. As the crowd moved toward the stage for Richard's speech, Naomi whispered to herself, "Tonight, I will not stay silent. Tonight, truth will speak louder than money and louder than arrogance." If you want chapter 2, then comment, "Continue Naomi's rise." Subscribe for more powerful stories. People froze when Naomi stepped out of the pool dripping with water, yet standing with a strange calm that scared Richard more than any scream, because she did not panic, did not shout, did not even look embarrassed. She simply lifted her chin and stared at him with eyes so steady that even the music in the gala seemed to lower itself, as if waiting for her next move. And Grace Howell tried to laugh it off, saying it was just a harmless joke, but her voice shook because she realized Naomi was not the type of woman who accepted humiliation quietly, and Daniel Parker stepped forward ready to help. But Naomi raised one hand, telling him she was fine, and she walked slowly through the shocked crowd, leaving wet footprints like a trail of quiet power, while people whispered, thinking she was just an employee or a +1 or someone who would stay silent. But Richard had no idea who he had touched, and he smirked again, trying to keep control, saying, "Accidents happen, you know how these things go." But his voice cracked when Naomi finally spoke, asking him one simple question: "Why did you push me?" And the ballroom grew so quiet that even the servers stopped moving, because her voice was soft but carried weight. And Richard tried to shrug, saying she was in the way, but she kept staring, and that stare made him feel smaller than he had ever felt in any business meeting. And Grace tried to step between them, telling Naomi to dry off and enjoy the evening, but Naomi said, "No, I will not pretend nothing happened." And Daniel watched her with a small, proud smile, because he knew Naomi never fought loudly, she fought smartly. And Richard tried to regain control by stepping closer, towering over her, and saying, "Maybe you should learn how to carry yourself in real high-class places." And just then Naomi's expression changed slightly, a mix of pain and strength, like she was thinking of every time someone like him assumed she was less. And she whispered, "You have no idea where I belong." And Daniel knew that tone. He had heard it in boardrooms right before Naomi destroyed someone in the most elegant way. And Richard laughed loudly, trying to mock her, asking, "What do you even do anyway, hopping to embarrass her?" But Naomi stayed silent, letting him bury himself with his own arrogance, and people around them watched with wide eyes, because they could feel something dangerous building, and Richard leaned in saying, maybe next time buy a better dress, so billionaires do not get confused, and Naomi did not flinch. She simply said, you just made the biggest mistake of your career, and Richard laughed again, because in his world, there was no way a woman like her could ever matter, but Daniel's eyes widened, because he knew what was coming. And when Naomi turned away heading toward the VIP wing, Richard looked confused for the first time, wondering why the security guards suddenly straightened when she passed, and why the event coordinator rushed after her calling her ma'am. And that was the moment people realized something was terribly wrong for Richard, because Naomi was not walking like a victim, she was walking like someone about to pick up a phone that would change the night forever. Stay with me. The truth is about to explode. Naomi walked toward the VIP wing with water still dripping from her dress, but her posture so steady that people moved out of her way without thinking, and Richard watched her go, trying to laugh it off, but his smile kept fading, because everyone around him looked confused, like they knew something he didn't, and Daniel followed at a distance, ready to step in if Naomi needed him, while Grace hurried toward Richard, whispering that maybe they should apologize before things escalated. But Richard snapped, saying, she can't escalate anything. And inside the VIP lounge, Naomi took a towel from a shocked staff member who addressed her as Ms. Carter with deep respect, and Richard's eyes widened from across the room, because he heard that name somewhere important, but he couldn't place it, and Naomi pulled out her phone, calmly scrolling through contacts, before tapping on one that made the head security guard stiffen like a soldier hearing his general's voice, and she spoke in a quiet, firm tone, telling someone other end that she needed a quick review of Vaughn Global Holdings, and a confirmation that the gala contract still stood. And Richard froze, because the name of his company coming out of her mouth felt like a bullet, and Grace whispered, Richard, why does she have your company name? And Richard whispered back, I don't know, but his face was pale now, and Daniel stood by the door watching everything unfold with a calm satisfaction, because he had seen this happen once before when someone underestimated Naomi and lost millions. And Naomi listened to the voice on the phone, nodding slowly, then saying, thank you, I'll handle the rest, before turning around and walking directly back toward Richard with the confidence of someone who didn't need to scream to win. And the crowd parted like she was royalty, and Richard's chest tightened because something in her eyes told him she wasn't bluffing. And Naomi stopped inches from him, saying, you wanted to know what I do, so let me answer your question. But before she could continue, someone shouted from the VIP balcony, Ms. Carter, your car is ready. And at that moment, Richard finally recognized her name, because Naomi Carter was the strategist rumored to have saved 3 major banks from collapse, the woman whose company managed billion-dollar portfolios, the woman whose signature on a document could raise or destroy markets. And he stumbled back, whispering, no, no, that can't be her. And Grace gasped, covering her mouth, because she realized they had humiliated one of the most powerful financial minds in the country. And Naomi looked at both of them with heartbreaking calm, saying, you pushed me into a pool because you assumed I was less than you, and now you will learn exactly who I am. And she told the event staff to prepare a quiet room because she had a call to make. And everyone understood what that meant except Richard, who kept shaking his head, because his empire depended on one signature, and the woman he insulted held the pen that could erase him. And Naomi stepped away, dialing again with slow, steady confidence, ready to end the night with one final move he would never forget. Naomi entered the quiet room the staff prepared, and the door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded louder than thunder to everyone still gathered outside. And Richard stood frozen with a sinking stomach, because he knew this was the room where decisions worth billions were made. And Naomi spoke calmly on the phone, confirming numbers, asking for files, requesting updates, and every word she said tightened the knot in Richard's chest until he could barely breathe. And Grace kept whispering, Richard, please apologize. Richard was too shaken, because it was no longer about apologies, it was about survival. And after a few minutes, Naomi stepped back out with the calmness of someone who had already won, and the crowd turned completely silent, waiting for her final move. And she looked directly at Richard, saying, I reviewed the contract between Vaughn Global and my firm, and my team informed me that you were weeks behind schedule again, and that made Richard's lips tremble, because he knew what came next. And Naomi continued, you mocked me, you disrespected me, you pushed me, but the funny thing is you also need me more than anyone here. And she pulled out a thin folder from her bag, placing it on the nearest table like a judge placing a verdict. And Daniel stepped closer, almost smiling, because he already knew what he was looking at. and Naomi flipped the folder open, showing the termination documents for their partnership, a partnership Richard depended on to keep his investors calm. And she said this signet will remove my firm from your projects, and your credit line will collapse within hours. And Richard shook his head, whispering, please do, Naomi. You don't understand what this will do to my company. And Naomi replied quietly, no, you don't understand what your words and your actions did to me, and every black woman you think is beneath you. And she signed the paper with one smooth stroke, and the sound of that pen hitting the page felt like a building falling, and Grace gasped, covering her mouth, while Richard grabbed the table for balance, because his empire was not shaking, it was crumbling. And Naomi closed the folder and looked at him one last time, saying, power is not in your money, power is in how you treat people, and you failed both. And she turned away, walking through the hall, while every guest moved aside, showing her the respect she deserved from the beginning. And Daniel joined her, smiling softly, saying, you handled that with grace as always. And Naomi replied, I didn't destroy him, Daniel, he destroyed himself the moment he thought I was less. And they walked toward the exit where her car waited, and outside the air felt lighter, the night felt brighter, and Naomi stepped into the limousine with her dignity untouched, her brilliance recognized, and her future even stronger than before. While behind her, Richard fell into his chair, defeated, realizing he had insulted a woman who not only earned more than him, but carried more strength, class, and power than he ever would. And the lesson echoed across the room like a warning: never underestimate a quiet woman, especially a black woman who built her life with her own brilliance, because when she rises completely, and when she walks away forever, leaving you to face the ruins you created yourself. Respect is worth more than wealth, and character is worth more than any title. If you want more powerful stories like this, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and stay with me for the next life-changing chapter.